My name is Olivia Bennett, and I'll never forget the first time I stepped into my in-laws' house. Their mansion in Charleston, South Carolina, looked like something out of a Southern aristocracy fantasy. Gleaming white pillars, antique furniture, and an air so cold it could crack glass. I had met Ethan, my husband now, during our final year at the University of Georgia. He was smart, ambitious, and most importantly, he never made me feel small. But the moment I met his parents, Judith and Charles Montgomery, I was reminded just how society still worked for people like them. Olivia, is it? What a simple name, Judith had said, flashing a polite smile that didn't touch her eyes. She extended her hand like I was there for a job interview, not Sunday brunch. They knew I came from a working-class family. My dad was a retired Navy mechanic, and my mom ran a local diner. I didn't grow up with yacht club memberships or trust funds. My parents gave me something more important: grit. But to the Montgomerys, all they saw was someone not on their level. It didn't take long before the snide remarks began. "Oh, darling," Judith would say to Ethan, with me right there. "She's sweet, but maybe someone with a broader social network would have helped your career." Every dinner felt like a chess match where I was always 3 moves behind. Every family function, I was either ignored or pitted. I wasn't good enough for their son, not polished enough, not wealthy enough, not Montgomery enough. Once, I tried to bring a homemade pie to their annual Thanksgiving gathering. Judith looked at it like I'd placed a dead bird on the crystal platter. "Oh," she said. "How quaint." It wasn't just passive-aggressive comments. They went out of their way to exclude me from important events. Charity galas, business dinners, even Ethan's cousin's wedding. Everyone received engraved invitations. I got a forwarded text. Ethan tried to mediate, but even he admitted they were difficult. "I love you," he told me, "but they just don't understand. Just give them time." But time didn't change anything. It only made it clearer that they had drawn a permanent line in the sand, and I was never meant to cross it. What they didn't realize was, while they were busy underestimating me, I was busy building something bigger than they could ever imagine. For a while, I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. Maybe I was just overly sensitive. Maybe I was misinterpreting their tone, their glances, the way their conversations abruptly ended when I entered the room. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was normal to feel like an outsider in a new family. But deep down, something didn't sit right. It started with small things. A laugh cut short when I walked in. My name being conveniently left out of group texts. Family dinners planned without me, or worse, planned with me but executed so awkwardly it felt like a pity invitation. I'd hear whispers when I went upstairs or into another room. I'd catch half-finished sentences like, "She probably wouldn't understand," or "It's not like she's one of us." At first, I brushed it off. I told my husband, Jordan, but he always gave me the same response: "They just need time to get to know you. You're new to them." But that excuse wore thin when the same behavior continued, month after month. I remember one night vividly. We were all at his parents' house for his younger sister's engagement party. Everyone was laughing, drinking, celebrating. I offered to help in the kitchen, just wanting to be included. His mother handed me a tray of appetizers with a tight smile. I walked into the room where the rest of the family was seated, only to hear Jordan's aunt say, "Well, at least she looks presentable this time." The room fell silent the moment they noticed me. Faces flushed. Jordan's mother gave a forced laugh and quickly changed the subject. I just stood there, stunned, holding the tray, pretending not to hear. That was the moment the fog started lifting. These weren't isolated incidents. It wasn't my imagination. They didn't think I was good enough. Not for their son, not for their family, not for their pristine world built on generations of wealth and elitism. But what hurt more than the judgment was the subtlety, the way they smiled in my face while spitting venom behind closed doors. Still, I tried to keep the peace. I kept showing up, smiling, helping out. But I began paying more attention. I noticed how Jordan's sister, Paige, would make comments like, "It's cute how you work so hard. I guess not everyone is born into money." Or how his cousin, Evan, always asked if I needed help figuring out simple things, like I was some child who had lucked into adulthood. They all dressed their condescension in sweet words and fake compliments. And the worst part? Jordan didn't see it. Or maybe he didn't want to see it. One evening, while we were staying over for a family weekend, I overheard something that shook me. I had gotten up early, hoping to get some work done in peace. I walked into the kitchen, only to hear voices drifting from the dining room. I stopped when I recognized the tones, Jordan's mother and aunt. "She's too ambitious," his mother said. "It's like she's trying to prove something. Always working, always talking about her business. What kind of wife puts her job before children?" "She's just not like us," the aunt replied. "She doesn't understand the right kind of priorities." I stood there, frozen. It wasn't just dislike. It was disdain. Deep, cultural, generational disdain. They didn't see me as an equal. They saw me as a threat. An outsider contaminating their perfectly preserved legacy. I backed away quietly, heart pounding. I skipped breakfast that morning. I didn't trust myself to keep a straight face. After that, everything changed. My ears became sharper. My tolerance thinner. I started noticing how often they excluded me from financial discussions. They spoke in code when talking about the family trust, as if I couldn't possibly grasp such complex matters. When Jordan brought up my success, a small business I had built from scratch, they nodded politely, but quickly changed the subject. There was one moment I'll never forget. Jordan and I had just closed on our first house together, a beautiful, modern home that I had chosen, I had negotiated for, and I had partially funded. We invited his family over for a housewarming brunch. As I gave them a tour, Jordan's mother turned to me and said, "I'm surprised you picked something so refined. It's quite tasteful for your background." I don't know what made me angrier, that she said it or that Jordan didn't say anything back. Later that night, I asked him directly, "Do you not see the way they treat me?" He looked torn, uncomfortable. "They're old-fashioned," he said. "They don't mean any harm." I stared at him in disbelief. "So being a bigot is fine as long as it's traditional?" He sighed and rubbed his temples. "You know that's not what I meant. I don't want to start a war." I realized then that I'd been fighting one alone. But I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. Something inside me clicked. I'd spent so long trying to win their approval, to prove I belonged. But what if I stopped trying? What if I stopped playing their game and started playing mine? From that point on, I began setting quiet boundaries. I stopped volunteering to help with their events. I declined invitations that came laced with judgment. I stopped laughing at their condescending jokes. And instead of over-explaining myself, I let my success speak for me. Still, I kept observing because something deeper was happening. I started to suspect that behind all their arrogance, there was fear. Fear that their precious son might actually respect a woman who didn't need their wealth. Fear that their old ways of controlling the family narrative were slipping. And then came the moment that confirmed it. At a holiday dinner, Jordan's father pulled Jordan aside while I stepped outside for a call. They didn't realize I was just on the other side of the patio door. "She's trying to change him," his father whispered. "You can't let her dictate the direction of the family." Jordan's voice was tight. "She's not trying to change me. We support each other." His father scoffed. "That woman will take everything and leave you with nothing. Just watch." That's when I realized. It wasn't just dislike. It was fear wrapped in tradition, cloaked in politeness, and fueled by a fragile ego. They underestimated me because they needed to. Because if they admitted what I was really capable of, they'd have to face their own inadequacies. And nothing scares old money more than irrelevance. That night, I didn't cry. I planned. They say a single moment can change your life forever, but no one ever talks about the sound it makes. Mine wasn't loud. No fireworks. No gasps. Just a simple ding, a text notification that would open the floodgates to everything they tried to hide. I had just returned home from the small design conference I had begged my in-laws to attend a year ago, the one they scoffed at, calling it a hobbyists' meetup. This time, I wasn't just a participant. I had been a keynote speaker. I placed my phone on the kitchen counter and went to wash the leftover coffee mug when the message came in. I wiped my hands dry and glanced over. It was from Priya, my old college roommate. "Hey, saw your name on the Vantage Investments advisory list. Isn't that your father-in-law's firm?" I blinked. I hadn't told anyone yet. My startup had just landed a strategic partnership deal with Vantage Investments, a multi-million-dollar collaboration that, ironically, my father-in-law had fought against in the boardroom just a week ago. His vote had been overruled by the other directors after I presented the new AI prototype to their strategy team. I had kept the news quiet. But now, confirmation that the word was spreading. I clicked the attached image. It was a screenshot from a financial blog. The headline punched me in the gut like poetic justice. Vantage partners with underdog tech visionary, the daughter-in-law they underestimated. I froze. For a moment, I didn't know if I should laugh or cry. That article, it was just the beginning. Over the next few days, I received a steady stream of subtle nods and sideways glances from the people who used to dismiss me. At family dinners, the condescension began to wear thinner. My father-in-law, always the sharp-tongued patriarch, started making small talk with me. My mother-in-law, who used to correct everything I said, now asked for my thoughts before making a decision. But I wasn't fooled. Not yet. Because something about their sudden humility didn't feel genuine. It felt strategic. Then it happened. A week later, we had a family gathering, my husband's birthday. Everyone was there, gathered around the long dining table adorned with candles, crystal glasses, and polished silverware. The atmosphere was uncomfortably cordial. And I knew I had become the elephant in the room. That's when I overheard them. I had gone into the kitchen to grab a dessert tray when I heard muffled voices from the butler's pantry, just adjacent to the kitchen. It was my father-in-law and his older brother, Uncle Dev. "We need her now, Ramesh. I warned you not to alienate her." I didn't think she'd actually make it. She was just, one of those art school types. Art school types now have half the board's attention. And the press is calling her a visionary. "You need to fix this." Fix this? I felt the tray shaking in my hands. Their voices, their words, they weren't admitting regret. They were plotting redemption. Not because they cared. Because they were afraid of losing control. I walked out of the kitchen like nothing happened, smile intact, voice polite. But inside I was spinning. So this was what I meant to them. Not a daughter-in-law. Not family. Just a failed bet that accidentally won. A threat they now needed to neutralize. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window in our bedroom, watching the sky change from navy to gray, questions racing in my head. Was any of their affection real? Did my husband know what they really thought of me? Could I trust any of them anymore? I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my lips. I remembered every cutting remark, every time they called my work a waste of time, every time I was compared to some distant cousin who married a doctor, every passive-aggressive comment about a woman's place. And now they needed me. I wasn't prepared for what that would feel like. It wasn't satisfying. It was hollow. I began noticing the changes more clearly in the days that followed. My father-in-law sent me an invite to a private business luncheon with key players in his circle. He never used to acknowledge my emails. My mother-in-law posted a glowing Facebook update about how proud she was of her daughter-in-law, the CEO. A woman who once told me, to my face, that she had hoped her son would marry someone less artistic. My sister-in-law, who always talked over me at family functions, suddenly started asking if I could help her set up her own Etsy brand. It wasn't admiration. It was convenience. One evening, my husband noticed something was off. "Why do you seem distant lately?" he asked as we lay in bed. I hesitated. I wanted to protect him, but I couldn't hold it in. "I overheard your father and uncle. The only reason they're being kind is because I'm useful now." He sat up slowly. "What exactly did they say?" I told him, word for word. To his credit, he didn't defend them. He didn't make excuses. He just lowered his gaze. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I think I always knew. But I didn't want to believe it." That was the moment we changed. Not just in our marriage, but in how we dealt with the family. From then on, we stopped trying to please anyone. And I started preparing. Because while they saw me as their last hope, I had options. I had power, and I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. A week later, the real shift happened. I was offered a board seat at one of the partner firms involved in the investment. A seat that would give me equal power to my father-in-law advantage. One vote, mine, could tip the scales on key decisions. And with that, I knew this story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anything to them anymore. It was about reclaiming the version of myself I had abandoned to earn their approval. And they were about to learn. I didn't need them. But now, they desperately needed me. I didn't plan the confrontation. It just happened. We were all sitting at the long oak dining table in their house, the one I wasn't good enough to sit at years ago. The atmosphere was stiff, like stale bread no one wanted to touch. My husband, Daniel, kept shifting in his seat, clearly sensing something was about to erupt. The conversation had been shallow up until now. Talk of weather, garden renovations, and a few strained laughs. But I saw the cracks. Marian, my mother-in-law, was being overly polite, almost robotic. Roger hadn't looked me in the eye all evening. So I leaned forward, placing my glass down deliberately. The sound echoed. Marian, I began. Do you remember when you told me I was too average for your son? She blinked. A muscle twitched at the corner of her lips. Excuse me, she replied, voice tight. You said I had no class. That I wasn't educated enough. You said I would never be anything but a burden on your family. Daniel tensed. Maybe this isn't. No, I said, my voice firmer now. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you treated me like I didn't matter. Like I wasn't worthy of breathing the same air. Roger finally spoke, muttering, That's not how we meant it. I looked directly at him. You said I was just a cashier who wouldn't amount to anything. You looked down on me like I was nothing. And now, here we are. The room went silent. Marian sat frozen. I started my business with less than $500. I worked nights, weekends, and lunch breaks while you all rolled your eyes. I learned everything from scratch. I built something real, something respected. Marian's voice cracked. We didn't realize how serious you were. We thought. You thought I'd fail. You wanted me to. My words came sharper now. You mocked my dream before I even had the chance to try. Roger stood up, perhaps to assert control, perhaps to leave. We were trying to protect our son. We didn't know you'd turn into this. Turn into what? I shot back. Someone successful? Someone who proved you wrong. His voice raised. We didn't ask you to bring this up tonight. I stood too. No, but I've carried it long enough. Your disapproval shadowed every birthday, every holiday, every time you invited Daniel but left me out. The tension was like static, humming and sparking, ready to burn through the walls. Marian began to cry. We were wrong. We were very wrong about you. I didn't flinch. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, tears and all. But now that it was happening, I felt no joy, no vindication, only a strange, hollow kind of clarity. Do you know how many times I cried? I said softly. How many nights I wondered if I was the burden you said I was. You broke something in me, and I rebuilt it piece by piece. Without you, without your support, without your approval. Marian reached out, but I took a step back. Please, she said. We've been trying. Haven't you noticed? The invitations, the gifts for your daughter. We're trying to make things right. I didn't notice, I admitted. But too late doesn't erase what came before. Daniel finally spoke up, his voice raw. They need to hear this, Mom. You never gave her a chance. You judged the person I loved before you knew her. A long silence followed. The weight of truth sat thick in the air. And then came the twist. Roger cleared his throat. I lost my job 6 months ago. We're struggling. Our retirement plans are gone. The house is. He stopped himself. I looked at him. My heart didn't leap. It didn't break. It settled into something colder, sharper. You didn't just invite us for dinner. I realized aloud. You need help. Marian's eyes lowered.
We didn't want to ask.
We were ashamed.
But yes.
And just like that, everything clicked. The sudden politeness. The careful hosting. The forced laughter. They didn't respect me. They needed me. I looked around the room that once echoed with their scorn. I'd come here thinking I wanted revenge, that I'd feel powerful watching them grovel. But now I understood something deeper. True power doesn't need to humiliate. It just exists. Quiet. Unshakable. I'll think about it, I said. Not because you deserve it, but because I do. They didn't argue. They didn't beg. The room finally felt honest. As we left, Daniel took my hand. I'm proud of you, he whispered. I know, I said. But I wasn't finished yet. Something told me this story had one more chapter left to reveal. Their faces said it all. Gone were the arrogant smirks, the disapproving glances, the sideways comments. Now they looked small, humbled, or perhaps just exposed, like statues that had stood in the rain too long, their shine stripped away, revealing the rusted truth underneath. After the confrontation, I didn't hear from them for days. No calls, no texts, just a haunting silence that echoed with years of judgment and cruelty. I kept waiting for my phone to light up, expecting the next act in their performance, maybe a denial, maybe a forced apology. But nothing came. The power shift had already happened, and they knew it. I thought I'd feel triumphant, that I'd walk away from that day with a heart full of satisfaction. But the truth was murkier, more tangled. I had won, but at what cost? I started noticing things differently. The way people shook my hand lingered longer. Their eyes held a new kind of recognition. The same in-laws who once asked me to stay out of the family's financial matters were now recommending my firm to their friends. Suddenly, I was worthy, but only because they needed me, not because they'd changed, not because they were sorry. They began inviting me to dinners I hadn't been welcome at before. Birthdays, anniversaries. Suddenly, there was always a seat at the table. I'd smile politely. I'd bring gifts. I'd play the role. But inside, a wall had formed, solid, thick, and impenetrable. My spouse noticed it too. You don't have to keep showing up, they said one night while folding laundry. We both know what they're doing. I looked at them for a long moment. It's not for them, I replied. It's for me. And it was. Each appearance, each handshake, each shallow conversation was a quiet reclaiming of the dignity they had tried to take from me for years. It was not revenge in the dramatic sense. There were no screaming matches, no slammed doors, just the slow, delicious discomfort of them having to watch me become exactly what they said I never would. But there was still one piece left. One unanswered thread. One afternoon, I received an envelope. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a note. Short. Sparse. In my father-in-law's handwriting. Meet me. Alone. It's time you knew everything. I sat with it for hours. Turned it over in my hands. My first instinct was to throw it away. But something in his tone was different. It wasn't pleading. It wasn't arrogant. It was final. We met in a small cafe on the edge of town. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller too. Like the weight of time had caught up to him all at once. I owe you an apology, he said, before I could even sit down. I waited. I judged you before I even knew you. Not because of who you were, but because you reminded me of who I used to be. That surprised me. I grew up with nothing, he continued. Scraped my way up, lost more than I gained. And when I saw you young, determined, unwilling to grovel, I hated it. Because I'd buried that version of myself. He paused, his eyes glassy. I thought killing it in you would keep it dead in me. I didn't know what to say. I had spent years waiting for an apology I thought would never come. Now that it had arrived, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt sad. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't beg. He simply stood, placed a small envelope on the table, and walked away. Inside was a family photo. Me included. For the first time. On the back, in faint ink, was a single line. It took losing my pride to see your worth. I hope it's not too late. But here's the truth. It was. Not out of malice. not out of revenge, but because some bridges, once burned, aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to remain ash so you remember where not to walk again. In the weeks that followed, life returned to a new kind of normal. My business continued to grow. My name, once the punchline of whispered jokes at family functions, was now on the lips of investors, journalists, and clients. I was building something bigger than they'd ever imagined, and they knew it. The same in-laws who once mocked my ambition were now asking for advice. Sometimes, they'd even ask for help. And sometimes, I gave it, not because I had to, not because I owed them anything, but because power, real power, is the ability to choose grace over vengeance, even when vengeance is deserved. One night, after a family event, I found myself alone in the hallway of their home. I wandered, drawn by curiosity or instinct, I wasn't sure. Then I saw it on a side table in their study. A framed quote, slightly crooked. "Be careful who you belittle. You may end up working for them."
I stared at it for a long time.
Had they bought it for themselves? Or was it meant for me? I left without asking. There was no need for more conversations. No need for dramatic endings or loud conclusions. The silence was enough. The truth had spoken for itself. But just as I was reaching for the car door that night, my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. "You were never supposed to find out what we did. But now that you have, stay alert." I froze. What was this? A prank? A mistake? Or something deeper? I looked around. Dark driveway, silent windows, cold wind pressing against the trees. And for the first time in months, I felt it again. The shift. The unfinished story. The secret that still hadn't surfaced. Because while the world saw my victory, while my in-laws now wore smiles laced with regret, I couldn't shake the feeling. There was still something they were hiding. And this time, I'd find it. Final shocking sentence. I thought I'd finally buried the past, until it sent me that message.